assemble teams from the best of Australia's car building and car tuning workshops to see who can build the toughest street monster. Our teams will go head to head in a final fuel-burning, rubber-shredding competition. In this episode, Autotech unveil their plans for the XR6 Monster. Rob Vickery and Nathan Higgins talk everything LS heads. And the father-son team at Superformance take us back to where it all began. But first, Matt from the Horsepower Factory transforms this modern classic into an animal.
So it's a VE GDS, 6.2 litre LS3. We're going to increase the capacity of the engine by changing the crank rods and pistons inside of the engine. So yeah, this is called a stroker engine. We call it that because we increase the stroke of the crankshaft, which brings essentially the pistons further down the bore, increasing the capacity of the engine. The engine's going to go from 376 cubic inches to 418 cubic inches. Just by doing that, we're going to increase the torque of the engine. So we're going to put a much larger camshaft. This is getting a really big camshaft in it because the guy wants something very grumpy and high RPM. We've got CNC ported cylinder heads from Nathan Higgins on it as well. In combination of the inlet manifold that you'll see, the cylinder heads and the camshaft will increase the breathability of the engine or how much air the engine can breathe in. Not only will that increase the capacity of the engine, it also makes it a lot stronger. So the crankshaft is forged steel, the con rods are forged steel, the pistons are forged aluminium. We're going to increase the compression ratio in the process, and all of that stuff's going to lead to a much stronger, more powerful, more torqueier engine. So this is not your typical head and cam upgrade. We're going to the next level by increasing the capacity, but it is a different option to a supercharger, because the supercharger is forcing the air into the engine. So everything we're doing is to make the engine as efficient as possible without the use of a supercharger. And that's going to come down to camshaft selection, compression ratio, inlet manifold, cylinder head porting, even valve springs and the retainers on these cylinder heads, the megadollar titanium retainers, so we can turn the engine harder. Where we don't need to worry about that so much with a supercharger application, because you might turn it to 6,500, well, this is going to go a whole 1,500 RPM more than that. So everything that we do is going to be focused on having the engine turn those RPMs safely and reliably and make the power in the higher RPM band. And this customer's chosen to make something really sort of on that ragged edge of what you'd use in a road car. This is your weekend cruiser. This is not something you're going to want to be driving every day, that's for sure.
Right, Sam, so Brad's obviously finished putting the engine together. I'm going to drop it in. And what we want to do is run it in with the original LS3 intake manifold. And that'll make sure that it's all going to be running like it should. And we'll get a baseline figure on the dyno. And then we can move on to the LS3 intake manifold and have some fun with that.
The customer's asked for something grumpy and tough. We've ticked all the boxes on that one. Big cam, big tubes, feels tough on the street. Once you get the new intake, this thing is going to be an animal.
So we've just popped down to grab some lunch, had a burger, and now it's time to go and see what it's like on the road. What a glorious day to be testing this 2009 GDS. So we started off by removing the engine and stripping it down, and we put a stroker kit in it, which means we made the capacity of the engine actually bigger. And it's gone from 6.2 litres to 6.8.5 litres. Makes a good solid 350 kilos at the wheels, which is no slouch. Like, that's easily blower territory and some. Factory fitted with a 6-speed manual gearbox, so she's a driver's car. It just wants to go. For a 2009 model car, this car is mint. The paint's well looked after, the interior, you'd still think it's brand new. Just want to keep those revs above 2,000 and it's a happy place to be. Anything below 2 and it starts to get a little jerky. But that's what happens when you put a big camshaft in a car like this. Drivability is going to suffer to some extent, but it more than makes up for that in the note and in the way it drives. Just that grunt, just a toe touch away and it's just, you can hear it, yeah? I just about reckon you could get some reasonable economy out of this car too. Like, I'm not saying factory economy, right? So let's get that straight. But you put this thing around, not that you really want to do that, but I reckon you could be still 13, 12 litres per 100 kilometres. And for the monster that it is, I think that's pretty good.
Coming up, we take a trip down memory lane with the guys from Superformance.
My father wasn't really a car guy, but my next door neighbour was, who happened to be my uncle. He was a tinkerer with a huge garage. He had his own pit, very well-equipped workshop back in the day. That was in country South Australia in a place called Mount Gambier. Yeah, I guess I started going there was probably late primary school years. I had a bit of a passion for tinkering and helping. I used to buy V8 cars predominantly from finance companies as a bit of a sideline, and I was restoring them on the side. My brother and I bought and sold quite a lot of cars in our early life.
His first car that he bought, I don't know, years and years ago, we've still got it out the back, so I think one day we might do it up.
And then when I was in my early 30s, I built a 34 Ford as well. The 34 Ford I've still got to this day, and that's the one that's had a big transformation recently with colours, engine swap. Still features the same trim, which is a testament to how well it was done back 30 odd years ago.
He's got a lot of his own cars. He's a bit of a hoarder, so he won't get rid of anything for free, that's for sure. My earliest memory of cars was probably sitting in the back of the old man's hot rod, just down in SA, real cold, sitting in the dicky seat, getting rained on. Not the fondest memories, but I had a good time. We were going to all the car shows and seeing all the different things out there.
I've had all three sons work here from different stages within the business. Todd's the son that's probably had more involvement in cars than the other two because he helped in the garage at home, building cars, putting cars together.
My first car was a 1990 Hilux. I was in the low lux era when everyone had one, so I had to get one. It had to be an extra cab. Painted it electric blue, and it had the four-wheel drive front guards and all the chrome bumpers you could think of, lowered on the 20-inch mags. It was a cool thing. Everyone at school thought I was cool, so... Oh, the chicks loved it, so every Friday I'd take a couple home from school. But no, that was a long time ago. I guess the cars I'm into now have definitely changed since then. So I don't do anything with plastic bumpers. It's got to be all old. I tend to stick into the 60s, even in the 70s, they sort of change and I don't like it, so.
Yeah, Todd's probably more fortunate than I was. He's actually been to university and he's been trained properly, and he's very proficient in CAD. He's got himself a really nice toy, a thing called a plasma table, so he cuts out lots of intricate shapes on there. He puts in all the designs via a computer system. We've taken the truck to a few shows since we've got it back from Calder. The response has been pretty mind-boggling.
Grant's other hot rod we've got on the road as well. We've been doing a couple of car meets with both the cars and the Harley, which is the same colour, so I guess we've been getting the name out there and showing the quality of workmanship as well. A lot of people are pretty impressed with the truck, so it's been good results.
Yeah, the C10 frame was really his baby and his design. He made sure that it was all going to work prior to going into production, so to speak, and making it. And the thing's a piece of art. Everyone that's seen it ever since just comments on how well engineered the car is and how cool it looks when it's actually bagged down and sitting flush with the concrete.
I've got 3 jobs on the go myself. We've got a 32 Tudor, 65 F100 and a 65 XP Falcon. The Falcon got a bit out of hand, so I put it on the back burner, and the F100's come in. F100's a pretty basic build. It's on a HQ frame, LS1 conversion, 9-inch 4-length. Most of that's already done. I'm just waiting on a heap of rust repairs, which should rock up any day in a container.
Superformance for 39 years has been importing parts ex-USA. Sometimes it's a 40-foot shipping container, sometimes it's a 20-foot container.
The majority of these items are just our special order containers. We do stock containers as well. But special order containers, anything from a specific nut and bolt to full bodies, engine components, just for unique stuff that isn't commonly found in Australia.
Items are coming in every day by air freight because air freight in small items is quite inexpensive and it's obviously quick. So if you've got customers that are looking for something in a hurry, obviously sea freight's not the way to go because it takes 6 weeks from Long Beach, California to Brisbane.
I don't know, I think I'm still gonna have to pay for my parts, but no, I think I do a lot of overtime, so it sort of works in a little bit.
Next up, Rob Vickery drops in on Nathan Higgins to talk everything LS heads.
Some heads here I need CNC ported, but I can't help but be amazed at how far you've come. I mean, it's been a while since I've been down here, but I remember 18 years ago knocking on the door and you're lifting it up and you were in a confined space, hand porting everything. You know, it was a totally different world back then. And to look at the machines today, obviously everything's CNC ported, and I'm really interested to know a little bit more about, you know, what you're doing these days. I think it's changed a lot. I can see you've got your logo on the front there. But yeah, I mean, maybe give us a rundown now on the benefits of CNC porting and how good your heads are today.
Yeah, like you say, Rob, you know, I was back hand porting like 18 years ago and getting sore hands. But now, yeah, it's all done by machines now. But look, the machines are only as good as what you tell the machine to do. So you copy a bad port and you'll have 16 bad ones.
One of the main things, obviously, with CNC porting must be that you can repeat the same port. You know, that's got to be a big benefit.
The LS heads these days have, you know, massive core shift in it. So it doesn't matter how good of a hand porter you are, it's very, very hard to measure the core shift in the head, especially down inside that port. Like you've got calipers and you've got a lot of ways of doing it, but it is hard. Where the machine, we will put it where it's supposed to be, every port.
Yeah. I mean, just to put it in layman's term, core shift, you mean the position of the actual port is slightly different. It moves based on how the casting is poured? Is that how it works?
Yeah, most heads are made from sand casting. So when they do the sand casting, you're pouring melted metal. So the sand cores can move, flex.
Yep.
You know, it doesn't take much to get them out of the way from, you know, obviously this end to that end, you might have a little bit of twist in the port.
Yep.
So like for a road car, hey, it's not going to affect them. You know, but for when you want to start making some horsepower, you want every cylinder to be, you know, individually spot on.
Yeah.
It does.
And the other thing I'm really interested in is, you know, how often you're revising your ports. I mean, obviously when you're hand porting, you probably just had your technique, your way you did your port, but now that you've, you know, computerised it effectively, I would think it's a lot easier to try and redesign your port, improve it, because you've got the ability, you've got flexibility in the machine. So how often do you do that? Is that something?
That is something here that we do look like. If you go back through my files, at least half a dozen, maybe near 10 different port styles I have. And this one's actually probably 3 months old, so I'm changing all the time. Once you stop R&D, well,
you get left behind.
Get left behind. So you always got to, there's something new. There's someone that knows more than you all the time. You talk to people, you learn something, you try something. Always trying something.
I mean, I notice you've even got new seat cutters, you've invested in new technology. I mean, is there stuff that you can do now, like, again, 18 years ago when you first did my Holden heads, you know, to what you're doing today, is that technology improving that part of the process?
Oh, 100%. Back then I was using the 30, which is it's a fine machine, there's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah.
But today I use new ones. Again, it's a CNC, it's a single point cutter.
Yep.
If I want to bore a 2-inch hole with the new one, it will bore a 2-inch hole.
Yep.
If with a 30, you'll get it. You're using a form cutter, and you'll get a bit of deflection.
Yeah. So it's a lot more accurate.
So it's just accurate, and then that gives you CFM.
Yeah.
And the good thing is, with a new one, you've got a computer. You don't have to have 100 different cutters for every application. You've just got 100 different files in the computer that you just press the button and take it.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of the things, I mean, a lot of people, I think, you know, when you say CNC porting a head, they think you're just doing the port, but when, you know, we drop a head off as a changeover, I mean, you're doing a lot more to it than that. I mean, obviously you're reseating the valves, cutting the seats, you know, you're resurfacing the head, and quite often you're also resurfacing to increase the compression of the engine by decreasing this chamber size. You know, you're cleaning it, you're checking your guides, and you can fit valve springs and set it all up, set your installed heights, do everything you need to do. So the head's literally a full changeover.
It's like, in old terms, it's fully reconditioned.
Yeah.
And fully CNC ported.
Yeah.
We carry a full range of the LS heads. You bring your heads in, we can swap them over within, say, 48 hours.
When your car is due for its next scheduled oil change, some old oil may remain in your vehicle's engine, which is normal. What happens is the remaining old oil mixes with the new oil, making it look dirty. That is why it's important to use the Blue Chem Oil System Cleaner. This will lead to reduced fuel consumption, reduced oil consumption, reduced emissions and improved engine compression. After the break, we find out what's in store for the Blue Monster at Autotech.
We're building for Workshop Wars is the FG XR6 Turbo. The gentleman who bought it just bought it as a standard car. And he was just keen on doing some modifications to get the car up and running so he can go do some track time down at the quarter mile. Basically he came in and we started off with just, simple bolt-on modifications, and Mick got that car down to a 10.0, running it down the quarter mile on a bog stock standard engine. Mick said to me, I want to head down the path of a low 9-second pass, high 8 seconds, and we sat down, put pen to paper, and we discussed what needed to be done, because to get a standard road vehicle to a stage like that, it takes a fair bit of money. You'd have to spend anywhere from sort of $70,000 to $100,000 to do it. So the motor has been pulled out of the car. The engine's gone into our engine room where Peter will strip it down and get it ready for machining and reconditioning, and of course there's some custom work that'll go into it. Yeah, so Peter, this is Mick's motor. Basically it's getting ready for a rebuild now.
So how do we actually put this one?
Well mate, this one here, because we're chasing 1200 horsepower, we've got to put a crank, we're going to put a crank girdle down the bottom, we're going to grout fill the block, obviously we're going to do some head work. There's a fair bit going into this one, but for now we'll just get cracking on the engine so we can start all the fab work for the turbo and get it ready. From there, what will happen is we'll get Steve, who's our fabricator here, who will fabricate the turbo up and all that to get everything to fit, the exhaust, the dump pipes. There's going to be a lot of custom fabrication because we're putting bigger radiators and all that sort of stuff in this vehicle as well. He's running some slicks on the back with some front runners. Obviously, you've got to get traction with that amount of power, hence why everything gets loaded up in the drivetrain. So when you get traction and the car doesn't wheel spin, the car is under more load than what you actually would be if you're in a burnout mode. So if you're doing a big burnout, or you're spinning the wheels, I should say, the car doesn't really have the actual load behind the drivetrain as it would if it was getting traction. So now that the engine's been in and Steve's fabricated all the turbo in, now Brendan's just mounting up the intercooler and getting it ready. From there, we're just going to set up the ECU and then get it ready for the dyno. We are applying NOS. We were using the NOS just to get it off the line, but before we run the NOS, we just want to test it without the NOS to see how good it works. And the NOS is a little extra feature that we could run if we decide we want to go a little bit quicker or achieve a bit more power. This is where people and clients get really impatient. They think you just build a car, you go out there, you run the car, and you're just going to run all these magic numbers. There's a combination of things that really make a car go quick. Firstly, and most importantly, you've got to have the car that's capable in doing it. Secondly, driver error is never taken into it. People go, oh, my car didn't go quick enough, but they never considered that they never accelerated properly, they didn't leave properly, they didn't leave at the right RPM point. Drag racing's a bit of an art. I'm no drag racer, and I don't plan to be, but I know it's not easy. I have tried it, and to do it consistently, to back your times is quite a skill. Mick's goal is to be the fastest XR6 in the country down the quarter mile, and he's a determined man, so I don't doubt that he'll eventually get there. The priority for Mick was safety, and the car's quick, and once you get to a certain speed and time down the quarter mile, by regulations you have to have it caged, and look, the cost of a cage could save your life. Mick is the owner of the project car that we've been working on, which is our feature car for the show. Unfortunately, had a pretty serious truck accident, you know, on his way to work, and Mick's been hospitalised. He's going to be there for a few months now, and yeah, we wish him a speedy recovery, and we hope all the best for him, especially his pride and joy. You know, he lives for this car. I hope he gets well soon so he can get the opportunity to run the car. He may not be able to drive the car on the day, but he's got his good friend Josh will definitely be steering or pedalling it for us that day.
Next time on Rides Down Under Workshop Wars, the Kia goes past 300 kilowatts at the back wheels. We meet Chris O'Shea, Master Trimmer, and the VK gets a new lick of paint. If you think you've got what it takes to be part of Workshop Wars, contact us for our next season.